Alright, I'm full of coffee and opinions. Hello! I'm going to be doing something a little bit different today and a little bit less scripted than my usual, and combating corp doomerism by putting all of the IDs into a tier list from don't to Lamau. I have seen a lot of people say that this runner meta is oppressive to the point where they feel like they can't play a corp, and I think that is an overreaction. I think there are a lot of really good corps right now, but I think that kind of putting everything into its perspective, relative positioning, and everything might help people find a thing to play, put some reps in with, jam enough games that they can feel confident in a corp again. Corping's very different in this post-Rashida world. I think that people haven't necessarily had the easiest time adjusting, and I'm hopeful that in combing through Always Be Running for tournament results, plus a little bit of vibes-based placement, we might be able to put things into perspective a bit. So what are our tiers? Don't is don't. These are bad IDs. They're not good. There's very few of these, fortunately, because I do think the game's in a pretty good spot. But there are some in here. We'll get there. Swiss cheese. I actually have to explain this one. So there are a lot of IDs and deck archetypes, really more decks than IDs specifically, that work really, really well in a closed deck environment and fall apart after the cut in open deck lists. A lot of times you'll run into like trap decks or decks with a particular gimmick or what have you that do fine in pools or on JNet casual and then struggle later. That is where these are going to go. I'm kind of looking at this from a more competitive point of view. As soon as a deck is a known quantity, does its stock go down? If so, it goes down. And there are IDs that tend to fall into that, so they're going to go here. Viable is viable. If you put your reps in with this, you will be rewarded with wins. That's just how it goes. There's kind of this like, it's not a heuristic per se, but there's sort of a number that exists with a lot of competitive card games where if you're somewhere in the 60s in the win rate, you're doing really, really well. Netrunner typically swings higher than that because you have a lot more control and player expression and skill comes through a lot stronger here than it does in other games. But I think that in terms of just general viability, you still have to contend with the volatility of a card game, you know, agenda flood or not finding breakers and things like that. These are things that happen, right? So viable is where these are good IDs. These are IDs that are good. Meta. So this is where we're going to put IDs that I think are real meta forces. This is an important category. If you are a corp doomer in the current rotation, you need to look here and up. And up is, we'll get there when we get there. Okay. So with that established, I'm going to go from bottom to top here and cover starting with the don'ts. And our first don't is Hyobu. Poor, poor Hyobu. So some of the IDs in don't are victims of bans or restrictions or rotation in such a way that they're worse off now. Hyobu's just kind of buns. There's not a lot of nice things to say about Hyobu. I have tried. I really have. But Hyobu is outclassed by other in-faction IDs, and it's not particularly close. Reveals are not a downside. In fact, they're often an upside, but they aren't a win condition, and making an extra dollar most turns is cool and all, but the way it does it is not especially useful, and the decks that come out of it don't actually win games of Netrunner super duper often. I generally find that Hyobu doesn't bring anything to the table that a better ID couldn't do. So we're not going to dwell too long on Hyobu. I will say the loss of Ingram Flush was a downer, but that's really the only thing that Hyobu is like missing. So yeah, not good. Not easy in these streets for Hyobu. Next, I'm so sorry. Thunderbolt is really bad, y'all. It was fun in startup. I had a good time with it, but in terms of standard, especially post-rotation, where sentries are now not especially scary because sentry, killers are some of the best breakers in the game in terms of breaker math. You're dealing with Revolver, you're dealing with Echelon. I don't see a world in which Thunderbolt is competitive. I just don't. I would love to be proven wrong on this, but Thunderbolt feels like an ID that started overtuned and then was kind of nerfed in every piece of its text at some point. It's like, oh, it only lasts for the run. Oh, it does, the strength and the sub, but only once, and it takes so much work to get anywhere. And then, like, Stego is just not a good agenda. You don't want to run it, so it's just kind of not... the core conceit of Thunderbolt feels flimsy. It's a shame. I think it's a really cool idea. Oops All Sentries is a really fun conceit, but it just doesn't really bear out in any kind of way. I would love to be wrong about this, but I don't think that I am. And then we have one more for don't. There's only 3. I told you it's not too bad, and it's GameNet. And GameNet is specifically just here because all of its good pieces are banned out. That's all it is. If Bologna or Gold Farmer come back, GameNet rises, like, immediately. It wouldn't be that big of a deal. Like, 17 influence plus more money stuff in a meta where money is tighter. Yeah, no, heck yeah. Absolutely you do that. But as it stands, GameNet's tools just don't exist, so GameNet doesn't exist. There are a lot of people who would tell you good, but I hate to see IDs go in the garbage because of bans, and this is very much one of those cases. It's a downer. It could change. I don't suspect that it will, but, you know, you never can tell. I know they were flirting with bringing back Gold Farmer at one point, so who knows? You know, things could improve for GameNet. As it stands, it is the queen of don't. Okay, done with that. And you may be a little bit surprised that it's just those in don't, because the actual Swiss cheese poster child is Ampere. Nobody plays Ampere. Ampere's not very good. It's arguably worse than a lot of these. But the reason it lives in Swiss cheese is because there is an undeniable massive intimidation factor when you plop Ampere on your side of the table and the runner just goes, oh, God. They have no idea what's in that deck. They have no way to know what's in that deck. And even when they start to see cards in that deck, that doesn't mean they understand what's in the deck. Ampere is the poster child. It is the literal most Swiss cheese imaginable, in the sense that it's not very good, but it's completely unpredictable and you have no idea what you're up against. It is the perfect example of the category. We are going to then get into better IDs within that, but it can't be in don't, because that surprise factor, as bad as the rest of the deck is, as non an ability as Ampere's text is, the surprise factor is undeniable. So this is where it goes. Next is mostly a result of nobody really playing it in the current card pool yet, and that's Mirror Morph. Mirror Morph is just kind of entirely unproven. I don't have a lot to say about Mirror Morph. I think that Mirror Morph decks in the previous format were basically just Prison. A lot of those Prison tools are gone. Could you still play Mirror Morph? For sure. Like, there are things you could do. I think there might even be things that are good, but, like, having to switch between your weird Mirror Morph turn for a click and being able to just, like, play Wage Workers in a better ID, it's a hard sell, right? So I understand why people aren't jumping to this old ID in particular. So it's going to live here. If Mirror Morph shows up, you're not necessarily going to know how best to fight it, but I bet you'll have an easier time fighting it than most other purple IDs. Except for T-Bolt. Poor T-Bolt. Isuak. So I have never seen an Isuak deck that is not Swiss cheese. Not once. If you remember in the last format, there was a punitive list that made a lot of waves, and then a bunch of people tried to run it, and they all failed. Because as soon as that's a known quantity, it goes away. The same thing basically happens with every Isuak deck, no matter how violent or no matter how vegan. It kind of just is an ID that relies on particular gimmicks to do its thing. And unfortunately, its thing is just sort of fine. It's not great. So I'm not convinced that this ID is going to do a whole heck of a lot, to be honest with you. If it does manage to get there, I think it'll get there via, like, Regenesis shenanigans and things like that, but that's true of, like, a lot of Jinteki IDs right now, and I'm just not sure I see what else it should be doing, so this is where it's going to go for now. And next to it is RH. RH lost basically everything it loved. It lost Back Pro, it lost Punitive, it lost so many tools that it was making huge use of, and now it is just sort of kind of flailing. There are other IDs that will do a lot of what RH does in terms of the card pool, and do it in an ID that's a little bit more impactful than the credit drip. This is better than Yobu by a lot. But it's not... I don't really know what RH should be doing at this point. It feels like it's been pretty thoroughly outclassed. That's not necessarily a problem. It is a little bit of a downer in the sense that, like, we can't make the subliminal type plays anymore. A lot of the stuff that RH was doing was really, really gross and really hard to, like, react to as a runner. So I'll be interested to see if this ID has a future. It seems like folks aren't really experimenting with it yet in general. I certainly haven't been. Uh, I'll be intrigued to see if it gets anywhere. I suspect it probably won't, but we will see. Okay, I'm actually going to skip around on the tier list a little bit here because I'm going to kind of amend my elevation card review after the fact, and I'm going to basically swap the scores that I gave Synapse and Nebula. If you didn't see that, I gave Synapse a 3 out of 5 and I gave Nebula a 2 out of 5. I don't consider Nebula to be an especially effective ID as a fast advance ID, which is what everybody, myself included, thought it was going to be. Synapse, I thought, by contrast, was going to be kind of the home of the R plus or NEH kill deck. This has not borne out to be the case. In fact, it's kind of borne out to be the opposite. And so as a result, Synapse is going to go here. I'm basically swapping their scores. I think that Synapse has proven to not be an especially good replacement for either of the IDs that it could be compared to. And as a result, it has underperformed quite a bit. There isn't a ton else to say other than just mentioning that non-end-of-the-line tag payoffs are worse than end-of-the-line tag payoffs. Winning the game is better than scoring an agenda, basically all of the time. I don't see Synapse being the home for that. I think Nebula has done a far better job, and therefore Nebula is going to rank higher. We'll get to Nebula in a little bit. We have other Swiss cheese IDs to mention, but I just wanted to mention that now. That those are kind of going to be reversed in terms of positioning. Okie doke. Next is Earth Station, and you might be surprised that we didn't talk about Earth Station already. The thing is, Weyland's really good right now, and while Earth Station is the weakest of the bunch, it's not that bad. The reason it's in Swiss cheese is because Earth Station has a lot of very direct counterplay. There's a lot of ways to beat it out. There's also, like, really rough matchups. Like, Criminal's not good for Earth Station. Shaper is not great for Earth Station. Anarch's alright, actually. Like, the ice destruction is not that bad. You tend to run a good amount of ice in Earth Station. I think that the sheer amount of tax on this can really put runners off their game. It'll mess up their math, and you can steal wins with it. But I also think that, like, basically any other Weyland ID is going to outperform this in terms of consistency, because the Earth Station click swap is good-ish. It's, like, good adjacent, but it's a little tough to say that it's a win condition. So, of the IDs in this category, this is one that I really want to keep exploring. It's one that I have been testing. It's not one that I want to share a deck list for yet, because I don't think it's quite there. But I do think it's interesting, and I do think there's potential, and I do think that you could knock down a GNK with it. It's just not quite where I would want it to be to recommend putting the reps in. I'm gonna keep, doing it because I'm a glutton for punishment, and I like the silly elevator, haha, go tall. But it's not the best. Alright, PT. So this is an interesting one in the sense that PT has two archetypes right now. One of them is mitosis traps, and one of them is rush with stuff like Hollow Man, using the ID to just, like, get a free click a lot, albeit for a credit. And those two things have basically zero crossover. As a result, this is, like, very much a Swiss cheese deck. This is one of those decks where you see this ID pop up, and you're like, okay, I have no idea if I need to be, like, horribly afraid for my life, or if I just need to run them over. You will figure that out mid-game, probably early game, frankly. By mid-game, you'll know for sure. The question is, does that give you enough time? And the answer is, a lot of cases, probably not. You can win with PT pretty easily. However, it is again, kind of like JNet casual ass ID. I've beaten really good players with it, and at no point did I feel like I outplayed them. It just does that. It's not consistent. PT's ability is a little bit rough, especially when we compare it to another ID later. And as a result, if you're playing Traps, which I think is marginally better, there is another ID we're going to talk about that does it a little bit better than this. And if you're playing Rush, you could do so much better. Oh my god. So PT is enjoyable. I actually really like it, but it is, like, very much this kind of category for sure. And then finally, the queen of Swiss cheese and our final entry in there, Banggun. I'm not calling it Bangoon. The internet won't let me. It's Banggun. Banggun rules. I love this thing. It is a ton of fun, but my god, do you die to centrals. Holy shit. it just keels over whenever sufficient central pressure is put on. Like, if you run into a shaper with conduit, you may as well just shake their hand. If you run into a deep dive player, you may as well just shake their hand. Both of those things happen to be green. That's not great. Also, shaper is like the hardest ribbon gun to kill, which is really, really bad. The criminal matchup is like kind of okay-ish, and the anarch matchup is actually pretty good. You can get by pretty alright. It's not great though, and like the trick with Bengun is like you can make the nastiest remote fork of all time, and that's really good and cool and awesome, and they will probably win by just simply not touching it and stealing more points out of your centrals than you could ever put in the remote. It does do cool things. There are things you can do to combat that, right? Like you can put Angelique or a similar type of thing on a central. You could splash a Hendrik if you're feeling especially cute. You can fill the centrals with bites and beholds. Like, there are a lot of things that you can do to make this not suck ass, but it always sucks a bit of ass. You're never 100% ass-free. So I enjoy Bengun immensely. I love this idea. I think it's a ton of fun, but let's not lie to ourselves here, okay? This is not scooting up until we figure out ways to actually force the runner to engage with it. And as of right now, I don't know that that exists. So it's going here, but understand that I am like fully endorsing having a lot of fun with Bengun. I think it is such a fun idea, oh my god. Alright, moving up to viable, we have Epiphany. I've actually been pretty impressed with Epiphany. I've been impressed in my games with Epiphany. I've been impressed with the tournament results for Epiphany. I think Epiphany is a really good home for NEH asset spam. This is the actual sideways spam replacement as opposed to Synapse, because its text is better. I think it rewards you for forcing the runner to engage in a more consistent and more effective and more powerful way than Synapse's install. I like this better. Even though it's not a free click, like, even though it specifically taxes you in that way, I think that Epiphany has proven to enable some cards that Synapse can't play, and is therefore a more compelling shell for kind of both kinds of NEH asset spam, whether you're just going wide to, like, run the runner over with tag and denial and econ stuff and then win with fast advance, or never advance, depending, or you're trying to do the, like, vegan tag thing with that, or if you actually are just running kill tools out of Epiphany, like, you could totally do it. I like the vegan stuff in here a tiny bit more. I think that's a little bit more compelling, because we're going to get to an NBN ID that's better at kill. But I actually really like Epiphany. I think it's totally viable. The reason it's low in viable is specifically because I don't think we fully cracked it yet. I think that this is an ID with an immense amount of potential, and I think as we see more of it and as it gets refined, it's only going to get better. I don't see Epiphany getting worse, and that's exciting. It's just not entirely there as far as I'm concerned. Not just yet. But it's pretty damn good. Oh, how the mighty have fallen. Yeah, HBPD's in a rough spot right now. And I say that relative to where it was, because where it was like very, very, very good. As it stands right now, PD's at a bit of a crossroads. You're either a never advanced deck or you're a fast advanced deck. You're probably not both, and it's not the best at either because the agendas HB has access to right now don't fit well. They're not especially great. I would caution against defaulting to PD unless you have a really good plan for it. Now, that said, I love a rushy PD still. I would still play YDL Midnight PD. Like, that doesn't scare me one iota. I think that that's totally viable. I think it's a ton of fun. It's a really enjoyable deck. And I think there's plenty of other things you can do with PD. If anything, this is another one that sort of feels like it's a little bit underexplored, but I think the big thing is that people are not super happy with the cards that got rotated compared to the cards that we got, because they fit the other purple IDs better. So PD fell more as a consequence of the changes to everything, and was one of the biggest receivers of, like, oh no, Rashida's gone, my stock go down, of, like, the entire old ID pool. So yeah, in an ID that very much wanted to go fast and just, like, utilize that extra hand size and leverage every bit of the card pool to go as quick as possible, PD got hurt the most because it can't do all of that anymore. It is hardly bad, don't misunderstand me, but it's just not what it used to be, and it suffers for the comparison. Next, this is my personal bias, and I will readily admit that, but I think Atea is great. I think Atea is solid. I think the big thing is it needs to be proven in tournaments, which I'm more than happy to do. But the big thing with Atea is that you are generating increasing amounts of value over the course of the game in such a way that it becomes really oppressive. With the downside of eventually you can reach a point where the runner just doesn't want to engage with your remotes anymore, and you need to hit that perfect balance between your remotes looking susceptible and not necessarily being, while also protecting R&D in particular. And it's hard. It's a tough balance to strike. I think it's a tricky ID to play, and it's an ID that very few people have played, but I think the potential is there, and the numbers are, like, objectively good. Like, you look at not the performance numbers, because they basically don't exist, but the ID numbers, the things that Atea can do are really solid. Again, I've had a lot of success with this. I made a video about the Atea deck that I've been running. I've made some changes to kind of, like, speed it up even further. There's, like, a Hollow Man off-off version that's been doing really, really cool things. I think Atea is underexplored, and I think it's very, very good. I think that these two could basically be swapped in position, but I'm going to put this here because I'm biased. Alrighty. Poetry. So, I have been more impressed with poetry than I thought. When they showed poetry off, I was like, it's kind of crappy sports metal, and I was sort of right and sort of wrong. In actuality, what this is like sideways HB rocket fuel. This thing just goes no matter what happens, and I think that's kind of beautiful. The best versions of this I've seen have sadly been on like 2 to 3 copies of Measured Response, and I say sadly not because I don't think Measured is great. I say sadly because it feels like there's something within the card pool that we're missing that warrants, okay, well, we need a backup plan. That backup plan is Measured Response because it is the best way to just, like, solve a runner who's gotten in over their, kind of past their skis. But it is really good at creating that scenario. And boy howdy does this thing haul ass. Like, if you're running... all of the new purple stuff that just accelerates your game plan is fantastic with this. And if you score an aggressive trend setting, oh no, what are they gonna do? Like, it's brutal. So, like, poetry is in this really interesting spot where it's so effective when it goes, but it can also completely fall on its face. And in a certain way, it kind of reminds me of playing Astrobiotics. And I know that is a weird comparison because it doesn't have an agenda remotely as good as Astro. But the gameplay of, I'm going sideways, if you engage with my stuff enough, I will lose, and my, like, my R&D is kind of fragile, but if I manage to keep things on the board for even a moment, I'm going to get so far ahead of you that you're not going to catch up. And to a certain extent, it actually more resembles Butcher Shop, because the secondary threat is, and also if you touch too many of my things, I'm going to blow up your house. I'm going to hit you with a car. So yeah, I actually really like poetry. I think it's a lot of fun. I think that its fragility is going to be its biggest thing. That win rate threshold I mentioned, you're going to achieve that by way of putting enough reps in that you're able to play really well and really fast. And poetry is good at that, but understand that, like, you are not going to be hitting the most ludicrous win rates of all time with this because it's inherently kind of fragile. That said, really cool. I've been more impressed with poetry than I thought, which makes me happy. If you told me I was going to be putting Prov in Viable a month ago, I would have called you a liar, but I am not on EA Sports, and they got stuff done. Prov is the premier traps ID right now. It does other things too, but it is the best at just running horrible advanceables. If you want to run horrible advanceables, you should probably just be playing Prov. Prov is better than PT because its advance is free, and it also gets to decide where it wants to put it after the runner commits. So once they actually make it, you don't have to, like, preemptively pay for it like PT does, right? You just get to get there. If it's a trap, haha, it actually has one more advancement on it, and the runner rolls their eyes, and then they eat, like, 4 tags or something. And if that's not it, then you get to advance something else, and now the runner has to make even harder choices. It's been great. This has been really good. Now, here's the thing. You would reasonably think that, like, oh, it's a trap deck, so, like, isn't it a Swiss cheese thing? And the answer is no, because this performs in cuts. Like, the cards are the best here. If you're going to play obnoxious, jinteki style trap deck, advanceable deck specifically, that kind, Prov is where you go. And I find that really kind of funny. I find it kind of funny, and I find it kind of sad. The dreams in which I'm dying are the Prov Devost I've had. It's pretty alright. I like it quite a bit. Is it the best at wide kill, though? No, it is not. Here's its friend Thule. Thule is playing a very different game plan, but it resembles it in the sense that it is a constant tempo tax, and if you mess up even once, you're probably dead. Thule is way better than I think people were expecting. A lot of the prison stuff, like MCA, rotated, and a lot of people seem to sort of assume that Thule was going to matter less with it, and instead it is the best sideways purple ID, and I don't want to say it's not close, because I do think poetry is good, but I think that Thule is harder to play against, and I think that isn't it Thule, actually? I might be saying that wrong. I'm not going to edit that out. Whatever. I think it's Thule. I think if you actually look it up, it's Thule, like the brand. Anyway, Thule is really solid. I think that the ID tax on this is very powerful. I think that the amount of pressure it creates for the runner to play very, 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 very safe is important. And I think that a runner that shows impatience will be killed more often than not. That consistency is important. This is another one where, like, if you score a single small agenda, be it an ag trend or a false lead, you are so ahead it is ridiculous. It's very, very, very good. And all of the different ways that Thule can, like, create a kill scenario are powerful, effective, strong, like, really good stuff that you should be doing. Here's a thing I want to mention. Thule, in particular, has some weird Swiss cheese versions that basically don't do anything with the ID text and play like fast advance or something similar. They're basically playing poetry again. I don't recommend that. I think that generally speaking, you don't really want to be doing that game. If you just want to be doing that, just play poetry. You will win games with that on JNet casual, but like it's not going to hold up in a tourney. Poetry is going to do the actual just like I'm trying to score, but I'll kill you by accident plan better. If you want to run a truly obnoxious kill deck that utilizes as many combo pieces as purple can muster, this is where you want to go. And at the very top of viable, Zviki. Now, this is a weird one. Zviki's really good. Like, really, really good. I think one of the problems that the broader card pool is running into right now is that Rush can feel weird when the ice is often cheatable. Weyland has the best ice. Their ice is consistently, aside from like Bran, the most consistently expensive to get through, and barriers are the best they've been in a long time. And Zviki has access to all of that, and it also draws into its combos with the greatest of ease. That said, I have it in the top end of viable instead of up at meta, largely because it's a little bit unproven, but I think the archetypes in Zviki are fantastic. You can play straight Rush with it, you can play Modernism with it, you can play Fast Advance with Plutus, and that is a ton of fun, by the way. I've been doing that a lot. I recommend it a lot. I think it is a blast. It is some of the most fun I've had playing, it's some of the most fun I've had playing Rushy Score Out Weyland since, Titan Transnational. I love this thing. I think it's incredibly fun. The only reason it's this low, and actually in my original draft I had it in meta, the only reason it's this low is because I think that it needs to win a few more tournaments before it really bears out. But I think it can get there, and I think it's really powerful. It just has a lower floor and a higher ceiling than some of the other IDs above it. But that floor matters. You need consistency. And once that's figured out, once kind of the core 30-ish cards of Zviki are really nailed down, I think that this ID it's only going to trend up. I think drawing cards consistently and pulling into your combos is just an objectively powerful thing to do. That said, we are moving on to meta, and meta begins with, much to my chagrin, Nebula. Now I want to be very clear here. I don't think this ID is great, but I do think that as a kill yellow ID, you can't really do better than Nebula with End of the Line. It is about as good as that could possibly get. This is one of those things where I sort of toyed with it being at the top end of viable and the bottom end of meta, but the fact of the matter is, it shows up, even though it lost Summer Showdown bad, it was the second most entered ID in a 150-person tournament, and it didn't show up in top 16. But most of those, from what we saw, were fast advanced Nebula. They weren't kill Nebula. And kill Nebula is obnoxious. It is awful to go against. I have been putting my locals through hell. I have been doing mean things on JNet. It is a really solid deck. Whether you're playing the King's version or CTV's version or CTZ's version rather, or basically anything like that, if you are able to produce tags and pressure and everything in Nebula, the cross threat, again, kind of Butcher Shop coded, right, of I have a fast advanced condition. It's not fantastic, but I do have it. And also, if you mess with me too much, I'm going to blow you up. Is just good. The way that Nebula exerts pressure is undeniably strong. However, it is also extremely matchup dependent, and that's why I was kind of toying with, does this belong in viable or does this belong in meta? I'm going to give this list one more pass before we're done here and kind of make that final determination as far as where it's at right now, because, like, the problem that Nebula runs into is that it beats Anarch fairly well. Seb is a little bit tricky, but, like, it can actually fight Hoshiko pretty dang well, because Steel Skin's just not real when touch-ups exists. So you're forced to kind of play the will they, won't they hand games if you expect the touch-ups, and you should expect the touch-ups. Criminal beats it to death. Like, the Criminal matchups are not good for Nebula. It is rough in these streets for Nebula if a blue ID's on the other side of the table. It barely matters what kind of Criminal. Shaper is weird in that, like, a run-heavy Shaper like a Dewey does really not great. Like, it doesn't really work super well, and Mag can just eat it for lunch. So it's really weird. I think that Nebula is inherently volatile, but I also think that the kill combos in this are so solid that I would be foolish to not put it in either the top of this or bottom of this. I still think the ID is just alright. But it is definitely better than Synapse in terms of just like, hey, it's the kill deck ID now. If you want to play kill yellow, this is where you go. I guess also Prov, technically, but it's a very different play style. I'm specifically talking kill combo out of here as opposed to like the Prov thing of I have a bunch of different angles and any given one of them could be it. Okay. Next we have BTL. BTL, to me, represents the last sort of vestige of Glacier, and I mean true, traditional, everything I install is here forever Glacier. Like, this is a really solid ID. Again, it utilizes advanceable ice better than anything in a card pool where runners are poorer than ever, with ice that is harder to get through than ever, and the subtypes that cost the most for runners to get through. Yes, BTL lost a lot in terms of, like, yeah, it can't run BioVault anymore. It's, the defensive upgrade situation is a little bit sketchy. But I think that the amount of power that BTL can get to, can achieve, can reach, combined with probably the best agenda suite in the game right now, makes it undeniable. I don't have a ton else to say about BTL. It's been fairly performant, and it just works. Like, if you want to play Glacier, this is where you go. Which makes the next ID really weird. Hi, Leo. Leo's so good, like, but it's not a traditional Glacier. You need to play it faster than you think. The faster you set up, the better, because you're gonna need to take your stuff apart, and I have noticed players kind of struggling with that contrast, but I've also seen amazing Leo play. Like, I have seen people who fully understand that everything in a Leo board is kind of temporary, and play it like that and use it to go faster than you'd expect. They do great. They do so well. And I think that Leo having a deck full of border controls that are mostly in the root and not sacking ice until they have to is, like, objectively powerful. It is so damn solid. It also beats matchups in a really weird way where, like, Criminal suddenly has a very difficult time. Anarch's kind of in the middle, although the ice destruction can be a little bit dicey. Shaper typically does okay here, actually. Like, Shaper, just generally speaking, has answers to the things that HB is doing. But Leo still can just exert so much pressure in being able to pop that ID ability and threaten that ID ability. It's also the purple ID that is the most capable of creating a remote that at the very least looks unassailable, in the sense that it's going to be expensive and they're going to have to run it twice. That's really good. And that's not even getting into, like, defensive stuff. That's not even talking about Managarm. That's not even, like, getting into any of the other things that make this decent. If Leo had a, like, better agenda suite, if it had Ikawa, this would be up here. Like, it would be a problem. As it stands, this is still a really strong ID. It's just a different play style than the likes of BTL. If you want an actual traditional Glacier, this is where you go. If you want to play sort of a hybrid Rush Glacier thing that's very unique and very strong, this is it. Leo's great. Speaking of Rush, though, we have Nuving. This has been a surprise. Now, I liked Nuving before. I played Nuving before. Now, I mostly played it as a weird rig shooter deck, but I very much enjoyed it. Nuving has borne out, though, to be an extremely consistently solid ID. It does well in general. Not a ton of people are on it yet, but considering it's the current deck of the week, thanks, Jai, I think that that is going to change. Nuving's great. Turns out, making 2 credits a turn, almost every turn, really strong. Really, really strong. And you have access to a lot of really cool tools. The incentive to use the expends and stuff is really interesting. They're not as important as the operations, but they are really good. Petty cache, as it turns out, is a reasonable replacement for subliminal, and in fact, in many ways, is actually a bigger benefit when you're trying to go as fast as Nuving wants to go. This wants to slam out 3 agendas very, very quickly. It's very good at it. It's very good at it. There's a couple of different ways you can structure this, but at the end of the day, I think that Nuving has borne out to be a very consistent, very solid ID, and I would be shocked if you didn't continue to see it in the future. I don't necessarily know that its stock is going to rise at all. This might very well be the peak of the ID, but I'm fully bought in. I think that this is very good. The comparison to Zwicky is weird. I think that they are doing different things. I think that Nuving's floor is higher, but its ceiling is a little bit lower. And as Zwicky gets figured out a little bit more, it may rise a bit and Nuving may fall a little bit. I think that they're actually fairly comparable in terms of power level, but this is a consistency diff, right? Where Zwicky can brick, Nuving basically doesn't brick. It doesn't brick in any way that any corp ID can't brick, right? Like, sometimes you get agenda flooded and you lose. That's just a thing that's going to happen. It's card games, baby. But Nuving's floor is higher. Free money is good. You definitely want that. So I think that that is just rock solid. You should learn Nuving. Egg. It's Egg. It's Alco. It's public enemy number 1. Everybody hates playing against sideways Jinteki. Well, guess what? You're gonna learn. It turns out, yeah, drawing a pile of cards and playing a pile of cards is great when they do what sideways Jinteki things do. Who'da thunk? Whether you're playing an honest-to-goodness, like, score-out deck with an accidental kill threat, or a full-on kill deck that hates its agendas with a passion and wants to hand them over, you can't really go wrong with Egg right now. It's just great. I was nervous in the elevation thing to give it 5 out of 5, because... I gave it a 4. Because I wasn't entirely convinced that the Jinteki card pool got there. No, it got there. We're good. Yeah, no, Egg great. Egg strong. Egg awesome. Regardless of the kind of egg you're playing, I think that you're going to at least have real game into the field. Because this takes, like, the kind of card draw focus thing that Zwicky does, and just pours gasoline all over it and lights it on fire. And it covers it in spikes, and makes the runner touch it. Like, it is hard to play against. It punishes mistakes harder than pretty much almost anything else. And it's really, really solid. It's about as consistent as a wide ID can be. It has the same wide ID weaknesses, right? Like, central pressure is bad for you. Azamat is bad for you. Chesva is bad for you. It has those weaknesses, but it's better at combating them than anything else. Its tools are better than almost everything that's like it. It's better than playing a trap deck in the sense that it's just more consistent. And I think that overall, we're going to be seeing Egg for a long time. I don't know what, like, I've heard people say that, like, oh, they should consider banning X or Y or whatever to kind of knock Egg's power down a bit. I don't think it's that kind of busted. I don't think it's busted at all. I just think it's good. And I think that people have always been bad at playing against sideways Jinteki. People are not particularly good at playing against wide kill decks in general. And a good wide kill deck ID in the red color is going to knock down games until people learn. This may be the highest Egg ever is. I'm readily willing to accept that. But it deserves its spot. And frankly, I'm glad it's here. I'm glad people have to respect the kind of playstyle that I've been at for like 10 years. So yeah, I love this thing. I think NSG did a great job with Egg. I think that this is just really, really difficult for runners to manage. But not as difficult as our only entry in Lamau, which is the boat. You should learn your kill ob lines right now. I'm not kidding. Learn your cost ladders. Look at the card pool because it's smaller now. Learn as much as you can about how to pilot ob and how to combat ob. The best way to learn how to beat ob is to play it. Because I'm going to tell you right now what ob is capable of doing are the best kill combos in the game of Netrunner right now. And it can do them while trying to score. I'm going to say that again. Ob, more so than Alco. More so than Nuving, which is just going to measure response you. More so than Nebula, which is literally only really trying to kill you and scores agendas whenever you're not doing that. Ob is everything. There is nothing Ob can't do. It's one of the best at fast advance, it's perfectly cromulent at never advance in its own weird way, and its kill lines are the nastiest in the game. I don't say that lightly. I really mean it. I think that the only reason we haven't seen Ob knocking down pretty much everything right now is because Ob is one of the hardest IDs to play, and it is a JNet-ass ID. In terms of design, Ob is so obnoxious to play in paper, because it's just like, hold on, let me pick up my deck, find the thing, shuffle, cut, do, like, it adds all these steps that JNet doesn't have. And learning your lines on JNet does not necessarily mean you can't hand yourself a game loss with Ob due to mishandling. But I am telling you, Ob is nasty, nasty, nasty. Like, this ID, if you understand it, and if you're willing to put the reps in, will reward you with some of the most powerful, unique, and truly oppressive combos and lines in all of Netrunner's history. I'm not kidding. I'm sounding the alarm, not for a ban, but to say, be ready. Be ready. Because when you run into an Ob player who doesn't just get unlucky and dies to centrals, you're going to have a hard fucking time. It is rough in these rivers if you're dealing with Ob. Yeah, I really just... I cannot adequately emphasize how basically every Ob archetype right now is doing extremely powerful, nasty things. Just 3 damage from hand when they feel like it, with combos of, like, Fot and Azef. And, like, they can summon the Fot to do it, too. Like, if they have a 2-coster anywhere on the board, they whip that out. They can get Powers that Be if they want. They can get Fot if they don't. Like, there's so... Oh my god, like, I'm not even going to get into all the Ob ladder stuff right now, because if I do, we're going to be here for the entire length of this video. Again, like a second time. Just learn your Ob lines. It is incredibly powerful. Trust me on this one. Ob is ridiculous. You learn to fight Ob. Learn to fight Ob. Alright. In conclusion, do I want to rearrange anything? Do I want to scoot Nebula down out of spite? No, I don't think that I do. I think that this more or less encapsulates the moment pretty well. Obviously, there's people that are going to disagree with stuff, and that's perfectly fine. I'll be curious to hear what people think is going to trend up or trend down. But overall, I would say you can absolutely win your corp games. You can definitely win your corp games at least most of the time. If you pick stuff out of this top 6, I can basically guarantee that your time is going to be well spent. If you pick stuff out of Viable, you will absolutely do just fine. If you're playing Swiss Cheese, you're doing it on purpose. You know what you did. It's okay. I'm one of you. Most of the decks I build are this. If you're picking stuff out of Don't, I wouldn't, but, you do you. Anyway, don't think you can't win your corp games. You can. The game's in a really good spot right now. I wish you luck. Go jam some games, and expect to run or one of these sometime soonish. I haven't quite figured out what that looks like yet, but it's coming. Thanks for watching.